Welcome to MapleWoodian.com podcast. We have on the phone our favorite real estate man, Mark Slade of Keller Williams. How you doing, Mark?
I'm great. How are you, Joe?
Good. Well, it's that time of year. Well, when is it not that time of year for real estate? But, now that
real estate's a 365-day-a-year job, let me tell you.
There you go. But the weather is melted snow, although it looks like a last gasp of snow is supposed to hit. But people are, thinking real estate. What is, here we are in nearing the end of March. Where do things sit in Maplewood, both for the seller and the buyer, from what you're finding?
If you are a seller or planning to be one, you couldn't be wearing anything better than ruby red slippers at the moment. The inventories are at all-time lows, even lower than last year at this time, which was, significantly lower than the year before that. And the end result is that it's pushing prices up. Multiple bids are the majority of what's going on. Statistically speaking, we've had 10 closed sales on properties that were listed since the first of the year in Maplewood. We've had more, but 10 properties were listed since the first of 2015. And 5 of them went for over ask out of the 10. 1 went for ask, and 4 went under. That's a pretty significant ratio. And they have averaged a 101.5% of asking price. The totality, the sum total of the dollar value of transactions this year to date has averaged 101%, 101.5% of the ask. And if you look at the properties that are under contract, there are 40 homes under contract, which is more than there are active on the market. That's a scary number for a buyer. It's a great number for a seller. And the average price of those homes that are under contract is $557. Last year, we ended the year at $521. So, you can't necessarily take this as the gauge for the year, but it's certainly a good direction. Let's put it that way.
So it's definitely the sellers. I'm sorry. So I think last time we talked to you about every 6 months or so. Last time it was definitely the seller's market then too, right?
Yeah, I have to be honest with you. It's been a seller's market in the Maplewood area for the past year and a half. My calculations show that we will exceed our peak values by July 1. So the peak values of 2006, 2007, before we had the most recent market correction, we will be at those levels again by mid-year based on the way the market is behaving.
So if you're in Maplewood and you want to sell, if you're in Maplewood and you want to sell, you're in good shape. But what if you're in Maplewood and you want to buy elsewhere in town, which that's something we see a lot?
I was talking with my friend Ben, a fellow realtor today, and it's the same kind of thing that you have to do. Unfortunately, you take your buyer clients, you give them, an understanding of what the market is doing, how it's behaving, and then you tell them if you can afford X and you're not a cash poor buyer, then you adjust your site down a little bit so you can afford to potentially get into a bidding war and pay over ask. The challenge is you must have cash reserves to do that, because obviously there's always a chance in an increasing market value like this that the house may not appraise, and if it doesn't appraise, you have to bring extra cash at closing, depending on the outcome of the appraisal versus the purchase price or the planned purchase price.
How many of your...
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, how many of your clients are moving within Maplewood? Is that a small amount, or is that growing or decreasing?
It's about the same. I would say that 20% of my annual transactions, and I do about 50 transactions a year, 20% of my transactions are buyers that are doing and staying in the town one way or they're either trading up or trading down. There are another probably 25% of my transactions where they're unfortunately leaving town, and those are usually empty nesters, job relocations, that are creating the need to sell a property.
And obviously you do business all around the area, not just Maplewood, of course.
I do business because of my web presence.
Sure.
I do business Chatham, Madison, Westfield, Springfield, North Caldwell, believe it or not, Bloomfield, Montclair, Glenridge. I guess so far in the past 6 months I've closed about $3 million in Montclair and Glenridge. As an example of my activity being all around. But 40% of my business is still Soma, Maplewood, South Orange.
So we should tell people, obviously, if they live in Maplewood and want to move out, but nearby, they should check into your office as well. And obviously, your websites are goodhomesforgoodpeople.com, kw.com, and Mark Slade's name there. And of course, we'll have a link on our site to this podcast as well. But are people in Maplewood staying within the town when they move more than any other town you deal with, or is it pretty average?
It's pretty much average, I have to be honest with you. I mean, the biggest challenge that we have is that depending on the age of the owners of a home and how long they've been in it, it's often that they're retiring, they're getting out of town. It really doesn't matter. If they're wanting to stay in the area, the challenge becomes, what do they buy?
Mm-hmm.
We are not a townhome heavy town. So, and ownership of townhomes/condominiums is rare in Maplewood. A little bit more available in South Orange. But even still, for someone that's, in the 50s that's now looking to potentially downsize to a degree, they're not going to want to have to climb the exterior steps to get into their apartment, which is, so often the case with a townhome. There are challenges. We just don't have that kind of inventory. So the good news is, at least for someone like me, is that I can help them in other areas, whether I have to take them out to Basking Ridge, where there's a significant amount of townhomes out there, or we deal with some of the townhome developments in, Union County.
And what about the idea of, the fact that it is a seller's market and has been for a while? What do you contribute that to? Is it just Maplewood's many positive attributes? Is it the Midtown Direct? Is it bad selling options elsewhere? What keeps us in good shape in terms of being a seller's market if you have a home here and you want the value to be good?
The good news is that it all relates back to simple economics 101. It's supply and demand, okay? And when supply is lean, as it is right now, it's excessively lean, it's almost scary lean, the market becomes a hypermarket, as I call it, where people do things that are not necessarily natural. They'll significantly overpay. They'll rush out on Thursdays to see the home at a broker open when taking a day off from work so they can get a jump on it and try to steal it so it doesn't make it to the weekend. People will do what they can. It's like a scarce supply. It's like what happens when we get these snowstorm alerts and all of a sudden you go to the milk, go to buy milk and the shelf is empty. It's the same thing with the housing inventory. We're in a hypermarket when we're at such low inventory levels, people do what they can to steal what they need to steal, and that means pay what they need to pay to take homes off the market.
Sorry.
That's the challenge. It's okay. That's the challenge. The challenge is in a hypermarket that you have to be prepared for all kinds of things that are going to happen and what people are going to try to do to get in and get a home. Because there are no inventory. There's no choices for them. So they're going to jump at what they need to jump at. Because buyers that are out there now with money, they want to buy. That's very clear. So they have to work with what they can find. If they want to be in a town that is commutable to Manhattan and they put a premium on the diversity of lifestyle that the Maplewood South Orange area offers, well, this is a designation. And, that article that came out in October in the New York Times has only added fuel to the fire.
And why is it there aren't many on the market here? Is it because people just are staying here longer than they might be elsewhere? Or in general, are people not moving as much in terms of towns like Maplewood? Because
nationally, we've seen a slowdown. It used to be the average American moved every 7 years. Now it's between every 10 and 11 years.
Right.
That, however, does not explain our scarcity of inventory. And I think scarcity of inventory it's two things. It's one is that the demand for inventory has only gotten stronger. Mm-hmm. So when you see that we've got 40 homes under contract and only 37 homes on the market active for sale, that's unusual. I mean, in Maplewood, when you look at South Orange, it's a little bit different. South Orange has 55 homes on the market, and it only has 46 under contract. That's a little bit more natural. So the fact that the inventory is being gobbled up as quickly as it is means that you can't build inventory when there are too many buyers out there. Mm-hmm. There are too many buyers relative to the current level of homes. We would need to probably increase the level of active homes in the market by 50% to put our market more in balance. And I just don't see that happening. And I can't tell you why. I mean, I get calls every day from people, and we're thinking about selling. We don't know when it's going to be, and selling a home isn't like all of a sudden you turn around and you decide I'm going to put it on the market. I mean, there's usually prep work that has to be involved, and that can include painting of exteriors and landscaping and interior work if you want to maximize the value of your home. So it's not a quick turnaround ever when it comes to selling a property. So that contributes to the market inventory lagging behind demand. But why it's at historic lows? It's only been, I can only imagine, it's just because we can't keep up with it. There's just too many buyers out there. And it's a challenge. I mean, I would tend to think if you were on the fence, you'd want to sell. I'm actually surprised I don't see more people putting their homes on the market. And the only thing I can think of is that, 2006, we were at such high levels, and they kept thinking that when it came time to potentially put their house on the market 5 years later, 2011, 2012, that they would have been 20% higher in value. And now we're only reapproaching that value. It may be that, since your home is your single biggest investment, people are waiting for a time when they can get more equity out of the sale of their home.
So if you're someone who owns a home and you're thinking about selling, but you say, well, I want to stay maybe another 5, 10 years, is the market looking to be as good or better down the line, or does it always have to kind of dip?
You can never forecast. There are 3 big factors in terms of when you want to sell. I mean, I have a client who has been sitting on the fence for 7 months, okay? The conditions for them couldn't be more right to sell their property.
Right.
But in contrast to that, if you look at the analytics that I try to provide my clients, the Maplewood market increased 6.5% in market value last year. So that's huge, okay? That's been, Millburn, in contrast, was 2.3% increase. South Orange was 4.9, still a very healthy number. So if you're thinking we could put 3 more years of that together, wait it out, that's almost a 20% increase. So if the average home last year sold for $521, that's another $100,000 I can hypothetically put in my pocket. Now, the challenge is one of the other mitigating circumstances, where are interest rates going to go?
Yes.
Okay, we keep hearing they're going to go up, and yet they still end up coming back down again. Every time they ratchet up, they find a way to ratchet back down. So we're still high 3s and under 4 is the best way to put it, as opposed to everyone's predictions for the past 2 years that we were going to get to 5. Now, a 1% change in interest rate has a huge impact on pricing. Okay, because it's for the current buyers. It doesn't mean we won't sell more expensive homes, but we will have a shrinking buyer pool for each level of home. But because interest rates don't really rise, or haven't really risen so far, there is no pressure for people to try to jump out there, and it works both ways. The seller says, well, since interest rates aren't really rising and market values are, I'll stay put. I'll make more in my money. Where am I going to get 6.5% return if I'm going to repeat 2014 statistics?
Now, the things that people look at, obviously, and since we cover the government and the schools, and you live in town and follow it as well, where does the school district image stand in terms of, you always look at not just tests, but you do such great background work on everything. Does the district, especially the high schools, numbers and image play well still for the new buyer?
Well, actually, in the past 3 years, if you use New Jersey Monthly, which is usually what we refer to most often, those statistics show that the Maplewood South Orange Columbia High School have risen from number 75 to number 47, basically flip-flopping with Montclair's high school. And so that's all good. I mean, we're not the number 1, okay? We're not, New Providence, which was last year's number 1. We're not Chatham's current number 1. We're not the year before is Millburn number 1, but the reality is when your school system is showing progress and increasing in rank, that is encouraging for people, because when they move here, they're usually moving here with young children in elementary level, which means they have 10 years of growth. Just like we talked about the growth in housing prices, well, 10 years, where's the high school going to be? If it's moving in the right direction, that's a great thing.
Right.
When you've got a high school like Columbia with great athletics, with great sports programs, and with what I'm told is the state's largest variety of AP, advanced placement classes.
Yes.
You've got the makings of a great school system, as long as you are, your parents that are involved with your kids and your kids that are involved with school.
Now, how about the rest of the township? And things like infrastructure. We have a lot of older homes. I think my home goes back to at least the 1930, and a lot of the neighborhoods are even older. And the infrastructure of the town, it seems solid, but you may hear more than us in terms of, again, adding to the attraction of the town as a whole, and, of course, Maplewood Village.
Well, the attraction to the town is because it is mostly 1925 to 1935 colonial, whether it's side hall or center hall colonial. That represents 80% of our inventory. So the bottom line is, and we talk about this in the context of meetings with people. There are no lands to develop to build homes here.
Right.
So you're not seeing new McMansions usually. What you're seeing are people renovating their colonial homes and making them modern on the inside, but maintaining the charm, the old world character of their current exteriors, because it then fits the context of the town. I grew up in a town that had a historic district from the late 1600s in Massachusetts with big trees and old-style homes, but there were also plenty of areas where there were new development. And this reminded me of the older section of my town, and I think there's a value on that, because when you think of something lasting that long, intrinsically it gives people a good feeling to see that something is older and serviceable. So, that's how I would view it.
I want to ask you also, again, we're talking to Mark Slade at Keller Williams. He's our resident realtor expert, and he will not only sell your home and find you a home, but he does such great background work, checking the numbers and helping you also set up your home for open house, and you and I have talked about that. How many of your clients are generally willing to do what has to be done to get the home ready? I always love asking about that, because it seems like it doesn't take a lot, but it can be a big payoff. Are people making their homes as sellable as they should, or is it still sort of a pulling teeth for some clients who don't want to make the effort?
Well, Joe, it's pretty simple. Once again, 60% of my selling clients will do everything that we suggest that they do.
That's pretty good.
You're right. Another 20% will do the majority of what I call the heavy lifting, the things that will add the most value to their homes, and they'll take their chances on the back end. And there are 20% that unfortunately do not have the financial wherewithal or the physical capability of doing what needs to get done. And there's usually, we need to sell as is. That's all there is to it. You do your best, and as long as you've told your client the impact and you haven't overpromised, I never want to overpromise on the value of a home. Bottom line is, you're doing them justice. They've made a decision. That's all we can do as a realtor, is provide advice.
And what do you think is the biggest mistake sellers make, whether it's financing or making the home ready or picking the right time?
Well, if you're picking the right time, the spring market, which is basically February 1 through May 15, that's time to be on the market. There is no doubt. Statistically speaking, I sell homes every year, every month of every year,
right,
every week of every month, and every day of every week. But the bottom line is this, that I've seen my own self homes that haven't sold in the fall, the winter months, but put back on the market in spring and sell for a much higher value. So spring market, because you're coming off the end-of-year bonuses and salary increases, people are more flush with cash, believe it or not, after Christmas, and they've gotten their bonuses and their raises. They're more flush with cash and more willing to put money into a house, on a house, and pay more for a house than they are at the end of the year. And the other thing is, you're also dealing with those people that when you're at the end of the year, it's usually you have to move. So a seller has to move and a buyer has to move. It's very different from, well, I really love this house, so even though I wasn't planning on buying it, I want it. So there's a little bit different mindset. So statistically, spring is the better market to list your house when you have a choice. Okay? As far as the other conditions for selling a house, putting the time and effort into it, people try to do some of the light stuff and think that that's going to go a longer way than it should. The biggest issue that I have with people is they may have great furniture, but the furniture is their lifestyle. It's now 20 years old. It still may be top quality, but that's not what today's buyers are looking for. People forget when they put their homes on the market, you're now no longer a home it's a property for sale. And
Right.
if you're selling something, then you want to make sure that property looks like what today's buyer, the 34 to 35-year-old average buyer is, what they're looking for, and that means you should look at West Elm Catalog, Restoration Hardware, and you're going to see very different styles in furniture, very different styles in the accent colors of home decorative items. I mean, you can see it at Target. You walk through the aisle at Target, you get totally different fresh colors that you don't usually have in your home. But that's what they're seeing, and that's what they're buying because that's what they're seeing. So if you have those items in those decorative colors and those styles, you'll do well. But the biggest challenge I have is when people have big, old, Naugahyde, clunky furniture that unfortunately is not what today's buyer is looking for.
And people want to look at a house like it's their house rather than something they're going to sell. And you want to make it the best. It's funny because again, you and I have talked about it, and we were looking to sell our house, but we decided not to. But a few years ago, my parents sold their house, and I remember going to the open house. I kind of snuck in to look around, and I was thrown by how the house looked so different. Not just because it was cleaned up, but it was immaculate in a way that no one would have expected a lived-in house to be. But obviously, people who were going to look at it want it to be in the best shape because the people are going to look at it, like you said, as a property, and also, it's the first impression. And especially, I'm sure most people go to open houses. You're not just going to one open house; you're going to many, and you need to stand out.
Correct.
But let me ask you something else, and we'll let you go in a moment. And again, we're talking to Mark Slade from Keller Williams. This is the Real Estate Man, and it's the real estate time of year. Was watching something the other day about solar panels getting a lot of push, and obviously New Jersey has certain programs for that. But I know a lot of people are afraid. Where do you rate? Okay, I'll give you three quick things. Where do you rate on resale value with solar panels on a house? And I'll give you two. Solar panels, good or bad for resale, and aluminum siding, good or bad for resale? Because I hear people get afraid of both.
Okay. So
two different things, but obviously they're things that people think about.
They couldn't be more different than apples and oranges, even though they're both fruit, okay?
There you go.
So, solar panels, because we have a movement of, in America towards more green homes.
Right.
There's even a designation now for realtors to study what green means, okay? Solar panels do actually, for the most part, add value. For as many buyers as it may turn off because you're stuck with the roof the way it is, and it's a leased environment, because it is dramatically lowering your cost of electricity, there's also a huge plus. I just listed a house in West Orange, and they have solar panels, and for the past 2 years, they've saved 60% on their electric utility costs, which especially in the peak summertime when those bills for air conditioning usually kill you, I mean, he's actually getting money back. So he couldn't be happier with Central Air having that type of environment. And, the year before I sold a house on Colgate Road in Maplewood. That had solar panels, and my buyers are very happy to have solar. So
right, and you're in Maplewood. This is also a very green town, a very very liberal town, very pro-green. We have a environmental committee. We have the green team. So yeah, I would think here it would go over more. But it's
here
still
it goes over very well.
Yeah.
The challenge, on the other hand, is vinyl siding. So when vinyl siding and aluminum siding, when people went to put aluminum siding on, which was more in the 60s and 70s, okay, it was because you put insulation on the home, so it should helpfully reduce some of your electric costs for heating and air conditioning, and it was supposed to be maintenance-free. Well, maintenance-free was only for so long. I can't tell you how many times I go to homes, and they have since painted the aluminum siding because it started to, not have the same luster. Once you paint it, you've eliminated the no-maintenance factor.
Right.
As a matter of fact, you might have to even have an accelerated maintenance because paint adhering to aluminum isn't the same as paint adhering to wood. Okay, so aluminum siding actually is a negative, and a lot of my buyers will actually look to take it off if they can.
Because there are people who just don't want it on the house. They don't want the look. Right.
Correct. Vinyl siding, that's more neutral because usually there are a lot of more modern vinyl sidings that look like wood.
Right.
So because it looks more like what they wanted, they're more apt to leave it and it is more durable, believe it or not. And the end result is it doesn't necessarily age as poorly as as aluminum siding does. So vinyl siding is kind of a trade-off. When it still boils down to it, the general Maplewood, South Orange Soma buyer, they prefer wood.
Excellent.
They prefer wood finish because they want to be able to do what they want to do and take care of the house as they can take care of it.
And the last thing, there was a third thing, and I know, again, because I ran into this years ago, and you and I have talked, and I see other homes, the in-ground oil tank and the oil furnace versus the gas furnace. Are people pretty much getting that problem taken care of, or is there a lot of in-ground leaky tanks still around that people are having to deal with before they can sell their home? In Maplewood, I'm talking about.
We do our best to advise buyers and sellers that this is a very, very difficult and upsetting scenario. And that is, for a seller, I try to have them do a tank sweep before we list their home.
Right.
Because the worst thing you can do is be on the market, eat up some days on the market, sell the home, you're happy, and then your buyer, 2 months down the road, finds a tank in the ground, and then that tank may have leaked.
Right.
Which is even worse. So your cost goes from just a simple $2,000 to $3,000 removal to now anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000, depending on how badly it leaked. And we've seen some cases where it's gone even worse. So it delays things. The buyers eventually pull out, and you're left with a home that's been on the market for a long time that somebody thinks that something is wrong with it when it was simply just an oil tank. And when I say simply, sometimes it's not so simple. But you don't want to ever put yourself in harm's way. Your buyer may have time frames that they have to work within. They have a mortgage commitment. They have a rate lock. Okay, they may need to be in for the school year. They're not going to necessarily put up with extenuating delays. So for a seller, it's essential that you do a tank sweep.
Are you seeing more homes that are beyond that problem who have already taken care of it, or is it still kind of the same percentage as in years ago?
No, more and more people have, for the most part, done their due diligence. But I have buyers for a home in Gulf Island, and even though the sellers had told us that they had an above-ground oil tank, they couldn't find paperwork to corroborate whether or not they did or did not formally have an oil tank in the ground that had been removed. So, of course, we had to invest, a few $100 and do a tank sweep. Frankly, I probably would coach any of my buyers to do so because, let's say they found a tank. I have heard of instances where they find a second tank in the ground.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So it's always a safety precaution that a buyer does that. A seller should do it for the same reasons. And it's critical that you get that out of the ground as quickly as you can, weather permitting, because it will be a sale inhibitor. It'll stop you dead in your tracks.
We had an oil furnace that died, and we had to get a new furnace. So we just got a new gas furnace, and just to get rid of things, we had the oil tank removed. It had leaked, but by some strange circumstance, our insurance covered the leak and the cleanup, and now we're all environmental. And I remember talking to you, and I think also to my homeowner's insurance guy, who said, you just dodged a huge bullet. And it's very hard to get homeowner's insurance now, even with a tank, right? Isn't that?
You can't. Actually, you're bringing up a very good point, and that is that the insurance industry has gotten wise to these problems and to the extent of the risk, and very often they're no longer covering oil leaks. So unless you're currently still using oil and you have oil insurance from the oil provider, which is very common, but they usually only do that when the tank is in the ground. But, God forbid the tank was still in the ground, you've already switched over to an above-ground tank and it leaked, you may not be covered. And if you renew your policy by switching to different companies, that's coverage that very often goes away.
Yeah, it's probably just a good thing.
That's a real serious issue.
I would imagine it's probably just a good thing for homeowners in general, just to know what their situation is and take care of it, so that people. I'm sure you get plenty of people come and they get a job offer or whatever. They want to sell, and they kind of have to sell quickly. And if you have an oil tank problem or some other problem, and I'm sure if people called you and said, we're thinking of selling, do you do service where you kind of give some consultation to people who maybe aren't necessarily selling but want to be ready?
Yes, all the time.
Yeah. So, and that's probably one of the things.
Conversation is 6 months to a year from now is selling client. But, what you don't want to do is assume because you've had your tank decommissioned, which is what 10 years ago was what people did. They decommissioned their tanks.
Right.
And I had a property right behind me where my poor neighbor, I sold her home for her. And the bottom line is we found that the tank that had been properly decommissioned really wasn't properly decommissioned.
But it was still in the ground, right?
It was so small, right. We knew it was in the ground, but we were told it was decommissioned. We assumed it was just a $2,000 herc and jerk. Out of the ground, we're done.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there were 5 holes in the tank.
Yep.
Okay, we failed from the township. We had to then come in and do remediation, and that was $19,652.
Ouch.
That my poor seller had to pay out of her pocket in eating up her proceeds unexpectedly. And, it was enraging to her to think that here she was. She had the tank decommissioned when she bought the house. That was when they bought it. That was the paperwork that was presented to her. I found the paperwork on file with the township offices. It said it was properly decommissioned, and yet it wasn't. The hole that was cut in the tank was so small, my cat would be the only thing that could fit in it.
Yeah, that's what we found, too.
The tank to scrub it, and if they don't get to the tank to scrub it and look for holes and pressure test it, they really haven't done what they were supposed to have done when they decommissioned. And so because there was no supervision for decommissioning of tanks, it is critical that you get that tank out of the ground and make sure it's clean before you get to a contract with a closing date that you end up having to miss because you can't be prepared to close because now you have an open permit with a failed tank.
Quickly, let me ask you, anything else the homeowner in Maplewood who is not thinking of selling but obviously may want to sell down the road, any other things like this they should take care of that is a good thing to get rid of or deal with now rather than right when you're trying to sell?
Well, the trick is to always do the right kind of maintenance in your car. I mean, people tell me, get like a house like you do on your car.
Right.
People have cars that are historic vehicles, okay? So a 1918 Model T, well, that's, that's almost 100 years old, right? But if you took care of it, it's still on the road. I've seen boilers that, have outlived their stated lifespan because they've been properly maintained. But when things are not properly maintained, good things can go poor very quickly. So you have an exterior that the paint is peeling, and you're now exposing wood to the elements, and you say, well, I'll paint it next year. Well, that's another year's worth of water penetration, absorption, heat expansion, cold contraction that can ruin your wood siding. And now, instead of just repainting, you're going to have to replace some wood. Okay? So anytime you have a home that you're thinking you're going to delay on the maintenance, what you're actually doing is probably doubling the cost of the repair when you go to finally do it. That would be the advice to give to people. Because homes, they depreciate in value when it's an investment in that sense if you don't maintain them. That means everything. The small leak, you say, oh, not a problem, it's in my basement, I don't care. And next thing you know, you got a flood.
And it always costs more to do something later.
Well, and often
no matter what it is.
It's an emergency. Right. And often it's an
emergency. If it's an emergency, that costs more too.
Exactly.
Okay, well, Mark Slade at Keller Williams and all-around real estate expert. Of course, we list links to your open houses every Sunday, and we love having you on to talk. And we'll put all the information up with this where people can reach you, phone numbers, website, and any last parting advice on where the market's heading as we enter closer into spring?
It's like I said at the beginning, it seems like it's a great time to sell, and I'm a firm believer that you're better off working with numbers and statistics that you can see, know, feel, eat, breathe, than guessing what it's going to be like in a year from now. So if you can get the right kind of yield to your home and it's a time to sell, take advantage of it. If not, it's not saying that next year won't be better. It may be, but I don't know where interest rates are going to be. They're unpredictable. I don't know what's going to happen in the industry job-wise. That's whether we're going to see increases in purchasing of homes or we're going to see decreases. So, I'm always a firm believer in doing as much research as possible, as much analysis as possible, and then you make a decision based on what you now can see versus what you can't see, what you can't predict, and make intelligent decisions. And as long as you make a decision that works for you, you shouldn't regret anything you do.
Excellent. Well, that's Mark Slade. He's at marksladehomes@AOL.com, lovetolivein.maplewood.com, and at the Keller Williams website, of course, always downtown in Maplewood Village at the Keller Williams offices. Check it out. Thanks again, as always, Mark, and happy selling.
Joe, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You have a great day.
You too.